They can't get you. They're not real. They can't get you. They're not real.
Hello and welcome to Let's Review. Richard has spent a rather substantial chunk of the last 2 weeks playing Darkest Dungeon, and frankly, well, it seems to have done things to him. However, since this was done by a video game, I'm sure we can fix it using the game's own logic. As such, there is a simple enough cure for gibbering madness.
Not real. No, not real.
There you are. Drink this.
Not real. Not real. No, they're not real. Not real. Well, that was weird. Hello and welcome to Let's Review. Darkest Dungeon. Yeah, I think it's best if we just get on with this before the booze wears off. Let's start with the gameplay. Darkest Dungeon is, like its name might suggest, a dungeon crawler, but one heavily influenced by roguelites and a constant feeling of existential horror. Before you delve into each dungeon on each mission, you begin by organising your party of heroes in the town.
This is the main town screen of Darkest Dungeon, and isn't this a lovely looking place? Yeah, it's really not. The town itself is given the name of the whatever estate. The default is Darkest, I didn't bother changing that. So, from here we have a number of buildings, and as you can see we also have our list of heroes. Needless to say that they are all of various ranks, so we have our level 5 champion, level 5... well, they're all champions technically, or the champion rank is what they get at level 5, so he's a veteran at level 3. But this is our level 5 Crusader, so we can look at his stats. So he's got grade 4 weapon and armor, which I'll show you where the upgrade later. And he's got 2 items, one of which is very rare and one of which is common. But they're both things that can only be given to the Crusader, so obviously it made sense to give them to him. You can scroll down this list, and you've got, as you can see, I've got heroes of various levels. So I've got some rank 5s, a rank 3, a few rank 2s, an absolute newbie who's rank 0, and some level 4s. You'll also notice that the background changes as you quote-unquote go throughout the day. Basically goes between dark and merely gloomy. So if I wanted to recruit some new heroes, I could go to the stagecoach. So I have 4 heroes potentially to recruit. Doesn't cost anything to recruit them, I should add, so that's quite reasonable. So because I have upgraded the stagecoach, as you can see here, I've gained the experienced recruits, which means that I can recruit heroes who are of rank 1 initially, rather than having to recruit them as rank 0s. The larger your stagecoach network, the more heroes you'll be able to recruit at once. So initially it's only 2, but by this stage I've got it to 4 at a time. And the barracks increases the total size, so I can have up to 16 heroes, and I've only got a dozen at the moment. So if I wanted to recruit, say, this grave robber, all I would have to do would be drag and drop.
To those with a keen eye, gold gleams like a dagger's point.
Pretty much any time you do anything in this game, you'll get a little bit from the narrator. So this grave robber class has flashing daggers, which can be performed from any of the back 3 spaces, and will hit both of the targets in the middle 2 spaces, as you can see there. Then Shadow Fade, which is a melee attack, which can only be done from the front 2. Thrown Daggers, which can be, again, done from anywhere. And Poison Darts. So it's all about figuring out exactly where you want to stick your hero. And you can also purchase these different abilities if you want them. Because each hero will always start with a list of 4 abilities, as you can see here. And you can only have 4 abilities at once. The next main building is the Tavern. And again, lots of upgrades available here, so I'll just demonstrate how you upgrade. At the bottom we have busts, which are used to upgrade buildings, portraits, which are used to upgrade buildings, deeds, which are used to upgrade buildings, and crests, which are used to upgrade buildings. Crests are used for pretty much everything, and you tend to pick up a reasonable number of them. Busts, portraits, and deeds are used for different things. Hence why I've got so many busts, is I haven't really bothered upgrading the buildings that require them. So here I'm just going to increase the quality of our gambling. So, cost me a couple of portraits and some crests, but we've now increased the stress reduction caused by gambling. So, the Tavern and the Abbey are the two main buildings that are used to get rid of stress. So if I look at the team that I last sent into the dungeon, or the 3 survivors of that team anyway, we have Renaud, who will not go to any of these, and there's a simple reason for that. He has God-fearing as one of his quirks, which means the only way he will relieve stress is by praying. However, I can send in Dismas, and it'll cost me 2,000 smackaroos to do this, so I'm not going to. But if I want to, I would just click confirm, and then he would be unavailable for the next delve into the dungeon, but after that he would have reduced his stress significantly. If I actually go into the log... Nope, nothing happened. Okay. I couldn't remember if I... There we go. Scroll back. And when was the last time I actually had to reduce stress? There we go. So yes, so I sent Gale, who's down here somewhere, there he is, to the Tavern to gamble, and he recovered 55 stress and was therefore no longer hopeless. Hopeless is one of the things you can pick up in a dungeon. Once your stress reaches 100, they will have a chance of either going virtuous, which reduces their stress back down to 50 and also gains them some sort of perk, or much more likely they will get some sort of negative effect. So in this case he gained hopeless, which increases stress damage and so on and so forth. If your stress reaches 200, your guys will have a heart attack and their health will be reduced to 0. Now that's not necessarily fatal, as we will see when we actually get into the dungeon, but it's not exactly a good thing. The Sanitarium is a little different. What that allows you to do is get rid of diseases, and also treatments. So I can look at the quirks, and if I wanted to get rid of, say, paranormal or paranormia, again, it's going to cost me 2,000 smackaroos to do that, which, I don't have the money to waste at the moment. Because you will almost certainly pick these up, and unless you can keep on top of them, getting rid of them is a bit of a pain. Most of them aren't that problematic. The mainly annoying ones are the ones that limit your stress relief options on them. The other thing I can do here is remove diseases. So, for example, she currently has bad humours, which is reducing her HP by 20. She has rabies, which is reducing her accuracy, but it is increasing her damage, so that one's a trade-off, and it's a case of do you want to keep it or do you want to get rid of it. And spotted fever, which reduces her blight resistance by 50. Now, blight and bleed are the two effects that are really annoying because they cause you to take constant damage every turn. And again, I could cure these if I want to, but, well, I can't afford it at the moment because I just don't have the money. It's not hideously expensive to remove one of those, to be fair, but still don't have it. Then we have the Abbey. And again, you can upgrade various things in the Abbey, but here it's worth noting that I've actually... because he will only pray, so I can put him there. And because I've got significant upgrades in the Abbey, or specifically in the transept of the Abbey, I can actually send 2 people to pray at once. It's no cheaper because you've got to pay for them individually because, well, obviously the guy's a bit mercenary, but that is a pretty effective thing to do. And once you've got everything maxed out, you can start really reducing stress very effectively. There's also the Caretaker. And the Caretaker's job is to basically annoy you by sitting in the one slot you really need. I'm exaggerating slightly, but he will almost always turn up exactly where it's most annoying for him to be. Got a hero who can only relax by praying? He'll be in the transept. Got a hero who'll only relax by visiting the brothel? He'll be in the brothel. And taking up one slot. He's late game, once you've actually got lots of slots unlocked, he's not a problem at all. Early game, he's kind of irritating. Now those 3 basically do a lot of the same job. The guild, however, is a little bit different. So, this is Renaud, who is one of my main guys. He's actually been in my squad since the first mission, because the first 2 guys you get are Renaud and Dismas. And I've been trying my best to keep them alive, because there is actually an achievement for getting them both through to the end of the game. So, you will notice that because Renaud is a level 5 hero, and I've significantly upgraded the guild to get Instructor Mastery all the way up to maximum, I can now afford to get the top tier upgrades for their various skills. So he's got Smite at level 5, he's got Zealous Accusation at level 4, Bulwark of Faith at level 4, and Battle Heal at level 4. Now I'm just going to quickly spend some portraits and some crests, which is most of my remaining crests.
A strict regimen is paramount if one is to master the brutal arithmetic of combat.
See what I mean about the narrator? And that has now made these things a little bit cheaper. Still can't afford them, because as you can see, I'm a bit broke. Which is what usually happens if you end up having to retreat from a quest, which I did. Because, you know, as you can tell by the fact that now I only have 3 level 5 guys, the other person I sent in with them managed to get himself killed. If I compare it to my Highwayman Dismas, you will notice that he has 4 abilities, but I've only bothered maxing out 2 of them. That's simply because I almost never use Open Vein or Tracking Shot. There's an argument to say I should consider investing in them, and I probably will do once I've got the spare money, but I don't at the moment. And again, my Vestal, Mordit, is primarily a healer unit, which is why I've maxed out her 2 healing abilities. And again, I'll upgrade those to rank 4 once I have the money. Compare that to my rank 3 hero, where if I got this upgrade here, I would not yet be able to get this one, because he requires level 5 in order to actually do that. And you only gain levels by completing quests, so if you're forced into retreat, you gain no experience from that, which is annoying. And again, you can compare that to my lower level heroes who have potential for upgrades, but you know, can't afford them yet. Whereas my level 0 hero here has absolutely nothing. It's worth noting that if you recruit them as experienced warriors straight off the wagon, they will have appropriate stuff. You know, so her abilities are already at rank 2, which is kind of useful. Then we have the Blacksmith, and the Blacksmith does exactly what you think. He upgrades weapons and items. Now, unfortunately, my Blacksmith isn't at rank 5 yet for either weaponsmithing or armorsmithing, which means I can't actually upgrade to the top tier yet, which is probably why my guys got killed on the last level. But once I can afford it, that will absolutely be worth doing. Because if you compare damage 7 to 9, or 9 to 17 rather, as opposed to... it's just showing you what the actual... That's annoying, I was hoping for... Hang on. So yes, so I've currently got Diseased Grenades, which is damage 6 to 10, and I can get 6 to 11. Now that doesn't seem like much of an increase, but that's because he's primarily a support unit. If I was to look at you, 6 to 12 as opposed to 7 to 13, and the upgrades do get significant if I compare you, who's now 8 to 15, and I suspect that's going to be a pretty serious upgrade. So that's the Blacksmith, and again, the armorsmithing operates in exactly the same way. It boosts your dodge chance and your base HP. The last of the... well, there's also the Graveyard, and the Graveyard obviously is where all your dead heroes go, and yeah, there's quite a lot of them. There's a hell of a lot of them. And the level of gravestone basically indicates, you know, how high up they were. So he was the guy who got killed in the last level, my champion man-at-arms, and losing him was kind of annoying. It's also worth noting that there is a slight bug whereby occasionally it doesn't quite show what your guys were killed by. It's a minor bug and it doesn't bother me because I almost never go to the graveyard because it's too depressing. There's also the Ancestor's Memories where you can rewatch cutscenes and listen to stuff he says, but I tend not to go there. And then there's the Nomad Wagon from where you can buy items that go into one of the 2 inventory slots. I've never actually bought anything from the Nomad Wagon because they tend to be either A, very expensive, or B, completely useless. You know, so again, I could upgrade it some more if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. Largely because that requires lots of crests, and I don't have any crests at the moment. There's also the inventory here, so I've got a Sun Ring at the moment, and if I wanted I could sell that for 2,250 gold, which would be potentially useful. But that's a pretty good thing to have, especially on a sort of damagey type unit, so I may well give that to Dismas or somebody like that. Because although it means they take a little bit more stress damage, it's definitely worth it for the damage boost. And that's basically what you do in the town. You manage your hero's stress, you kit them out ready for battle, and then you send them in, while continuing to upgrade the town. And it is worth noting that the town's appearance does change as you upgrade. This stagecoach looks significantly different to how it was when I first got it, and generally the town starts to look less like it's falling down the more upgrades you get. But basically, that's it for the town section.
I like the town for the most part. In particular, it works well as a way to organise your heroes, and I do like the fact that it changes visually as you upgrade it. The problems I do have are mainly balancing related quibbles, mainly that it takes bloody ages to build up enough funds and various other resources in order to actually upgrade stuff. If this game featured any kind of microtransactions, I would say it felt like pretty hideous gouging. Since it doesn't, it's merely kind of frustrating, but that's a personal foible. Once you actually decide that you're going to go into a mission, you have to pick which one, and you also have to do a little bit of provisioning.
After you've been to the town, you decide which heroes you're going to send on a quest. Now, as you can see, there's a number of different quests available to us. So, for example, we can look at this level 1 quest in the Warrens, which is a simple medium level quest, and complete 100% of rune battles. The medium refers to the amount of time it's expected to take, and if it's either a medium or a long, you'll get given firewood, which allows you to camp. So, now you will notice that I had 3 heroes selected there, so if I put them back in, and they are all my level 5 heroes. If I go to a quest that they deem is unworthy of them, like say this level 3 quest, they will all basically tell me to bugger off and say they're not doing it. Which is kind of annoying, because for example I've got this boss over here to kill, who's a siren, and that's quite a difficult fight, so ideally I would like to send in some overpowered heroes to just trounce her. But I can't, because this game is deliberately designed so that you can't do sneaky things like that. I can't even send a level 3 hero to that, which is kind of annoying. So these guys basically don't particularly want to go back in, which is fair enough after seeing their friends die. If I were to say build a squad of these guys, and then to click on say this quest, they'll do it, but they'll spend the entire time complaining, and they'll get so stressed so fast that it's basically impossible to complete. So yeah, they do not like that idea very much. See? It's kind of fun tormenting them with the idea that you're going to send them on a really horrible quest. So I'm going to take the Arbalist out and put the Grave Robber in, just so I've got a, mostly level 2s with a little bit of backup from... Actually, no. I think I'm going to take you out, put you in. So that's a squad made up entirely of level 2s. And occasionally your squad makeup will get given a name, in this case, the Hellhounds. And I'm going to send them on a... Actually, I don't want to do that because I don't want her leveling up before we actually fight the boss. And I'm going to send them on a mission to go and kill the Siren. Because that's a medium mission, that's a good indication. So, once you've decided which mission you're going to do and who you're going to do it with, you have to provision your squad. So, you're going to want food, because if your guys start starving in the middle of quests, that's annoying because they start whinging and they lose health. So you want to take along some food. You can have up to 12 slots of food in a single party slot. Certain items you get for having heroes in your thing. So for example, if you've got a Crusader, he will always bring along some holy water, and you don't have to pay for that. Shovels are useful for clearing obstacles. Anti-venom cures blight and can also be used on certain things. Bandages cures bleeding and can be used on certain things. Medical herbs can be used on certain things. Skeleton keys can be used on certain things. Holy water can be used on certain things. And then last but not least, we have torches. Torches are extremely important, and it's best to bring along as many as you can. Now, you only have a limited number of inventory slots here, but it's worth taking it up initially with a bunch of stuff. And that's kind of it for the provisioning. I'll show you how all this works once we actually get into one of the dungeons, but for now, that's kind of it.
This is fine for the most part, although it does have 2 major annoyances. The first is your party members refusing to go on any mission that they feel is beneath them. This is kind of frustrating, as it means you've got to keep a bunch of low-level heroes around to deal with lower-level bosses, and once they've leveled up, you've got to get fresh ones in. It certainly means you have to keep a healthy supply of recruits, but it's still kind of irritating. The other issue is that the backpack has a fixed size. There is no way to upgrade it, and frankly, that's a little annoying, since more than half of it will be taken up by supplies when you go into each mission, assuming you have the funds to buy those supplies, and as a result, that severely limits the amount of loot you can carry back out. This can be kind of frustrating, especially if you're trying to build up a bit of a war chest, but Again, I can understand why the developers did this. It's deliberately designed to make you choose whether you want to risk ditching supplies you brought with you, risk not bringing supplies in the first place, or just leave behind the loot that you don't have room for. It's meant to be a balancing act, but it's one that's kind of annoying. Naturally, though, this leads us on to the main dungeon gameplay.
This is the main screen of Darkest Dungeon. From here we have our 4 heroes, who were crazy enough to go on this mission, and you can see their stats below. So he's currently got a health of 40 and a stress of 92. Now, starting a dungeon with high stress is not a good idea, but I didn't have many options. Now, we start off in this location, and we can choose to go to here, or to here. Anywhere with a connecting corridor. Now, we can see what's in some of these rooms because we scouted. Scouting is something that happens at random based on a hidden dice roll each time you go to the map. And if you manage to successfully scout, you'll gain information. Now, we actually got a critical success scout here, which actually has shown us a hidden door. And a hidden door is an excellent chance to show you some stuff, so I'm going to head this way. This is not necessarily the best idea, given that there's a battle in our way, and ideally we probably want to be fighting as few battles as possible, so that we can come at the boss with as much health as possible. It's worth noting that that effectively time doesn't pass while you're not moving. So, I'm going to head to this room, and we're going to go forward, go forward, go forward, and any second now, we're into a battle. Now, sometimes you will surprise the enemy, but that really is a random chance. You have a better chance of it happening while your torchlight is high, for some bizarre reason that I don't understand. But it's, well, we're doing. So, first of our guys to be able to move is our Highwayman, Oral Bar, and I'm going to use his pistol shot ability. This ability can be used from either of the back 3 slots, any of the back 3 slots rather, and can target any of the back 3 slots on the enemy formation. So we have a Cultist Acolyte and a Phallic Groper. So I'm going to target the Cultist Acolyte. And that's done 7 damage, which as you can see is a significant chunk of his health bar. Now we have our Crusader, who's right at the front, and he's taken a little bit of damage, and his stress is still not good, but I'm going to use a Smite ability. Now this can target either of these two. Ideally I would hit that guy and take him out before he can do anything, but obviously don't have the range on that attack. And since he's a Crusader, he doesn't have any abilities that are good to hit in the back row, with the exception of Holy Lance, but that's only if he's in the back 2 rows himself. So I'm just going to target this Cultist Brawler. And that's done 8 damage, and that's a good clean hit. Now he's using his Eldritch Push ability, which, as you can see, has pushed our Crusader to the back row. And our Highwayman has taken some hits and is now bleeding. This is obviously bad. I can cure that with some bandages, or I can just let him bleed until he stops bleeding. That's usually what I prefer to do, because bandages are very useful for certain things. So instead, I'm just going to heal people with my healer unit, because, well, it's a primary job. So she's going to use Divine Grace on our Crusader to heal him up. Now, we now have our Hellion at the front. Now, I was going to demonstrate Breakthrough, which is an ability that actually causes her to move forward 1 space, but I'm still going to use it anyway because it targets 3 enemies, and it's got a reasonable chance to kill both the Cultist Brawler and the Cultist Acolyte.
A devastating blow.
Didn't do that, but it did do significant damage to the guy in the middle. The guy at the back dodged it annoyingly. Now he's hit us with an attack that deliberately increases stress. And now you get to see a test resolve, and he's failed. You will fail those resolve tests so much more than you pass them.
But only rarely.
It's quite rare to actually hit a virtue. Right. So I'm now going to... He just moved, so I think it's more efficient for me to kill him.
Confidence surges as the enemy crumbles.
There we go. And he's left behind a corpse. Corpses take up spaces the exact same as the guys who had them, and you can get rid of them by attacking. And again, I'm going to use Divine Grace to heal Highwayman. Taking a healer along is a very, very good idea. So I could deliberately attack that corpse, and if it was destroyed, then the guy at the back would be forced to move forward. But instead, I'm going to use Breakthrough again, which in this case killed the guy at the front, did some damage to the corpse, and this guy's down to 1 health, which means he's very, very badly injured. Because he's gained abusive, he will basically be an absolute dick to all his party members every time it's his turn. So I could move him forward. So I could swap him with either of these two. But at this stage in the battle, I think it's more efficient for me to use Holy Lance. And that was a critical hit, which killed him immediately. And we've gained some crests and some gold. Both of these are useful to have.
They can be beaten.
Once we reach the point with the secret door, we can go in here. And we can interact with this chest. This is an ancient artifact, a chest unchucked for centuries. Now we can just try and open it, but it could be trapped. So instead, we're going to use a skeleton key. And that opens it up, and that's very, very good to have, because they will often give you some very nice stuff. So these are giving us a puzzling trapezahedron, which is worth 2,500 gold each. Now, while it takes up an awful lot of space in the inventory, that is well worth having. Now, you'll notice our torch has dipped to 72 out of 100, so I'm going to use a torch to boost it by 25. And from here, we're going to move back to this room. And that's largely a good representation of the gameplays once you're in the dungeons. You move around, you try and find what you're searching for. So in some missions that's search all the rooms, in some mission that's complete all the battles. In this particular one we're looking for a boss monster. And the boss monsters will always be in the room furthest away from your hero's starting point. So it's most likely in this room over here. And now you can see hunger. This is a random thing that crops up. If I hit that, they will take 20% damage. If they eat the food, they only gain 5% health. Because this game hates you. And this is one of the many random things you can find. In this case, it's a torch. Torches are useful. Never, disregard torches. And then we could head into this room, which would potentially be another battle, which, you've seen a battle now, and they follow the same basic makeup. Different enemies have different stats, and you can hit them with abilities like Blight and Bleed, and various things like that, but it's not necessary. It's a good idea, but it depends on the enemy in question. There's also Stun and various other things. So, fundamentally, that's kind of it for the gameplay. I should mention that this squad is a rank 2 squad doing a rank 1 mission. But there are no rank 2 missions. Basically, there are rank 1, rank 3, rank 5, and then rank 6 missions, and that's it. So this squad has a reasonable chance of actually making it through to the end of this mission, but I don't think you need to see that. Because fundamentally, that is it for the gameplay.
I enjoy the gameplay for the most part. It's tense as hell. The knowledge that at any time one particularly dodgy battle can take out half your squad keeps the pressure on, especially when you're doing more difficult dungeons with squad members that you've spent a long time building up and making stronger. Losing one of them is incredibly frustrating, and since you can't save scum, there's no way to undo it. This does keep the tension up, although I will freely admit losing a level 5 or level 6 champion is incredibly annoying. And I do kind of mean that in a good way. It hurts because it's supposed to. With that said, the RNG nature of the combat might bug some people. I don't have a problem with it, but I can understand people feeling frustrated when it feels like the game is weighted so heavily against them, because the difficulty of this game is pretty brutal. But much like another game with Dark in the title, I suspect taking away some of the difficulty would also take away some of the point. Overall, the gameplay of Darkest Dungeon is really quite good, provided you're a bit of a masochist. Darkest Dungeon is set in the well-known location of town name here. Following the receipt of a letter from an elderly relative, you arrive in the town to find that you have become the new lord of the manor, following the death of your relative from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The reason he chose to kill himself is pretty simple. He's opened a portal to hell.
Why is it in fiction that writers always seem so concerned about those? The one in our garden has been quiet for months.
Yeah, but ours is just a regular portal to hell. His is a portal to Lovecraft hell. It's way, way worse. Naturally, as the new owner of your manor, your job is to delve into the dungeons, find this portal, close it up, and solve everything. And honestly, that's kind of it for the plot.
Oh, let me guess. This is one of those create the story through the gameplay types.
Yeah. there is no real story here. There's an awful lot of lore and backstory, but all the actual story and events are basically the stories that you tell as you play, which isn't strictly speaking a problem, but I will freely admit that I will always personally prefer a strong character-driven narrative. And there aren't any characters here, for the simple reason that if they're going to die permadeath, you can't really go and characterize them. Because, let's face it, if you're rolling through loads and loads of guys, it's difficult to do that without making them either really generic so they can be replaced easily, or having to give yourself an awful lot of work. With that said, though, I'm going to do what I usually do in this situation. I'm going to explain what my solution to that is.
Ah yes, because that is what people want to hear.
Given the limitations I've already discussed, it's not viable to make any of the heroes characters. So the obvious solution to that is you characterize the town, or rather the people in it. Think about it, this town clearly has a lot of people in it, so make them the characters we can relate to. The put-upon barman who's really, really sick of adventurers trashing his pub. The priest who's fraying at the edges and his faith is barely holding him and the rest of the town together. The blacksmith who wishes he could go with the adventurers to help, but is stuck at his forge, helping the only way he can. There is a lot of potential for things you could do here, and frankly, I would have liked to see them do it.
So you wanted to copy XCOM then?
Pretty much. I mean, if you're going to copy something good, right? While I know that this won't be an issue for a lot of people, it's something I would personally like to see. And if this game ever gets a sequel, I think the developers should strongly consider this suggestion, if they see it, which they won't. From a technical standpoint, this game is pretty well put together. While there aren't exactly an awful lot of animations, so therefore it's not much of a system hog, it will run very happily at a comfortable 60 frames per second, and that was even while I was recording, so no trouble there. It's also worth noting that I didn't encounter any bugs that I noticed, so as such, I think I can comfortably say this is a pretty well put together game. The art for this game is gorgeous. I am very comfortable saying that I really, really love a lot of the monster designs. They are all suitably horrifying. And at the same time, the hero designs are all pretty good, and you can tell each class apart at a glance, and that's very nice to see. The one quibble I do have in that regard is that the heroes don't appear to change appearance as you upgrade their gear. It would be quite nice if you could tell at a glance the difference between a level 5 Crusader, who's got all his armor upgrades, and a level 0 fresh off the coach by the level 5 guy just looking more awesome. Overall, though, that's a pretty minor quibble. The backgrounds also look really good, and there's a decent amount of variety when you're going area to area. With that said, within each area, it might have been nice to have a little bit more variation, but again, I think I'm reaching for things to quibble about here. Overall, I'm very happy to say that the art is really, really good. The audio is good, but not exceptional. The music is a prime example of that. It's very atmospheric, very moody, but it's also pretty forgettable. It's certainly not a soundtrack I'd be rushing out to buy. That doesn't mean that it's bad in any way, just that I think it needed a little more panache to really push my personal buttons. The sound effects, on the other hand, are absolutely fantastic. Gunshots and crossbow bolts feel like they have real weight and impact to them, and sword strikes just sound fantastic. The voice acting is limited to one guy who acts as a narrator, and the guy has a really, really awesome voice, but he definitely needed a few more lines. It does not take long before you've heard pretty much every line of dialogue he's got, and he starts to repeat himself. And this starts to get a little bit annoying, awesome as his voice admittedly is. Overall, the audio is pretty good, but there were certainly areas I think they could have improved a little. So, did I enjoy Darkest Dungeon? In spite of the psychological harm it seems to have done me, yes I did. Should you buy it? That will depend very much on your tolerance for RNG. If, like me, you don't mind it, you could have a lot of fun with this game. If you hate it, stay the hell away from this game, because this game is hideously unfair, and you will feel like it's weighted against you, because, well, it's supposed to be. It's very much one of those games that you need a bit of a masochistic streak to actually enjoy, but I will freely admit there is no feeling in the world quite like beating a boss with just that tiniest sliver of health left just before your heroes go completely insane. At the end of the day, I'm happy to say that Darkest Dungeon is pretty damn good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think the voices are starting to come back, so yeah, I'm going to have another drink before I start quivering again. I'll see you later.